Inclusion's not just a nice, cuddly idea, it's tied up with productivity, as pointed out by these elements in McKinsey's report. However, when they talk about addressing people left behind, how do the formerly excluded people come to accept participation in a program? If investment is in heretofore unmarketed intangibles, what are the intangibles seen by those who are excluded? If we talk about reskilling to use new systems, how can those new systems be used for training and education? Professor English has visited and done research, anthropological research in Silicon Valley a couple of times, and she knows that programmers are code jockeys, are mediators between users and the public. Programmers must make people more visible in the engineering equation, their needs, their risk sensitivity, but they also have to ask, someone has to ask them, what is their image of the clients? And Professor English wants to emphasize, and I want to annoy you, by saying that programmers are the conscience of our new technologies. And we have to pay attention to their conscience, and those of you who are programmers have to take a responsibility, because these new technologies are less visible, penetrate more quickly, and are so comprehensive and fast-growing, we may lose control of them. Fortunately, one approach to ethics is to use the profession's codes. What do the professions here, the Association for Computing Machines, what do they hold as guidance for programmers and designers? These terms, well-being, harm, avoidance of harm, non-discrimination, and privacy, are all familiar. But now in particular for professional principles, not just general ethical principles, how is it that coders are responsible for giving a comprehensive and thorough evaluation of the systems? Not just coming up with some clever algorithms, but an understanding of the possible risks. Moreover, the professionals are obliged by their organization to foster public awareness of what's going on with these new technologies. So, getting away from North America, we go to the German Association of Engineers. And they have these usual values, safety and health, you've seen before. But they say that their engineers, European engineers, are responsible for, through their programs, making sure we have environmental quality, personal development of individuals, and social quality, their interactions. Moreover, the engineers should respond to conflicts that arise. Those of you connected with Europe know that the precautionary principle is a key ethics and legal principle to avoid risks that cannot be controlled, to avoid unpredictable, to name unpredictable risks. This principle, however, is not yet that widely introduced in the United States. If we don't have ethical guidelines, if the professionals don't adhere to them, we have model-based moral disengagement. So this anthropologist, Bayunza, studied Wall Street trading and the use of complex models there that created disengagement from the clients. So there was an asymmetry between the bank and the customers. Do our new programs, our new systems, cause a distance between companies and their clients? The ACM says not just programmers, but those who are managers and leaders in corporations have an obligation to the public to assure that in all the work done in their work units, in their subdivisions, is occupied with the public good. Moreover, 3.2, the leaders in the companies are obliged to make sure their staff is encouraged to accept and evaluate. It's not just a norm in a poster near the coffee machine, but how does the staff come to accept because of guidance from leadership? Who's in charge? Who made this decision? How are they contactable? Or what are our fiduciary obligations beyond contract to the profession and to our clients? How is it that the leaders make sure that those who are experts in technology don't simply modify a system or retire a system because they have a more comprehensive idea? They have to recognize and tell the staff, the engineering staff, that the care of systems is particularly difficult when it's been integrated into society, especially when this new infrastructure has been made available to those who have been formerly excluded. Or look at it negatively. Look at the red situation. There's a misuse of blockchain. It's reported in the press that erodes social trust. How do we anticipate this? In the future, name and demonstrate before you put the product out there what goods this inclusive FinTech is seeking to achieve. Let the public know that so that you develop social trust, because social trust is intrinsic to the public good of social cohesion. Why bother with inclusion? One measure, apart from professional codes, is the Sustainable Development Goals. This comes from a 2023 report that tries to match which of the SDGs correlated with sustainable development by way of inclusive FinTech. And actually, inclusive FinTech across various nations was able to reduce hunger, reduce gender inequality, and promote economic growth. However, the report did not find a correlation on these targets: poverty, health, innovation, and other forms of inequality. Part of the reasons were, the authors surmise, is that the institutional quality of the systems put in place was not yet at a high enough level for local needs, or because social support, legal structures, for example, were not of high enough quality, or financial literacy on the part of the clients was not developed enough, or, in fact, engineering, the infrastructure was not widely supported or maintained properly. Now, from large questions, SDGs, to tiny questions, algos are shaped by social choices. So this recent issue, the latest issue of Science and Technology, this author, this professor from Utah says, when confronted with any large data set, who collected it? What categories were used? What info was left out? Whose interests are being served? Diane Coyle, economist, London, says that machines are good. They deal more competently with complexity and data. But when there is uncertainty, or when there are many rapid changes, the advantage tips back to humans. So, when you have norms governing data, embed offline cultural limits, say in terms of gender equality, racism. Effective human judgment should always be alongside automated decisions. Legitimate law, regulation, must shape collective decisions being encoded. Yet another approach to ethics. Which procedures were used by the company to persuade clients to utilize their system? When the clients were engaged in the course of using the system, how did the company, the corporation, ask them about their experience? How often? How were individual clients changed through the use of the system? Since you've been sitting here, I've had my students hack your phones to see how many hours you spend a day on your phones. How has screen time changed by using inclusive FinTech? How has risk-seeking changed? How does the inclusive FinTech take into account and provide for inequalities in ability and capacity? Do the participants know the relation between cause and effect in a system? How did this decision come to be made about me? Is cooperation still possible? This question is raised by McKinsey. Why is it an important question? Guterman says that social connections are a positive externality to markets. Social connections. Oh, networks can overcome ethnic divisions, or they can worsen those. Do the companies who extend inclusive FinTech come to understand how the participants are brought to cooperate or to play against each other. This is a recent article from Atlantic. It talks about our experience with smartphones. Many of us, especially teenagers, way in my past, have this experience of being disembodied, losing track of time. We click and click and click, getting into an experience, but it's always shallow, and we're left alone. So the dangers are that we lose a sense, those who use a new FinTech protocol may lose a sense of how it's affecting their neighborhood or how others can help them. In terms of time, they may say only the moment or the next moment, but not be able to attend anymore to the consequences in a week, a month, or a year. Their knowledge of the social impact of what they're doing, or their understanding of how the system works may be limited. Tim Harford in the Financial Times says that the overall experience of using smartphones can lead to de-skilling in social engagement. That is to say, not only are people separated from each other, they no longer know how to make community with each other. So, how has the data been gathered? Ask this, not of the programmers, not of the manager, but ask the people using the program. Do they know? Do they know how the information is derived from the data? What was not included? What knowledge was gained? So possible other inclusions, some of which have been talked about in the preceding rich conversations. What's the availability of food? How dangerous is the water? What about the spread of a disease? How can I learn about that? Where can I find new employment? Healthcare, where can I find healthcare? What works, what doesn't work? If I'm a healthcare worker, how can I seek support? In terms of climate, do people know what they're facing? Rainstorms? Do they know about increased heat, THI index, on their children? And do they know what they can do with all of us to address climate change? More generally, possible inclusions. If you take equality as a focus, and we've touched on gender, race, and ethnicity, we want equality of dignity. So why does this person fumble with the keys? How can you help that person in the design of the UI? How does this program, this FinTech program, help them meet their needs? That's not enough. How does it help them desire to advance their capacities, their capabilities? And then how does it enable them to have civil interaction? Not just with friends, not just with their favorite football team supporters, but talk about their local issues. See, this is being done in the mainland. This came out recently in state council guidelines. Not only access to basic financial services, but help with rural revitalization. In China, that means water and soil. Development of micro businesses among the marginalized. Of course, financial literacy, and help people to understand what risks they haven't anticipated, especially with the new system. Oh, you've heard about this. Dangers, use others' output for private gain, labor practices being questioned, environmental costs, drink that water, epistemic crisis, does this really count as something I can believe in? Large language models are biased toward majority opinion. They're unable to cite their sources. So we need regulation. The German engineers say there's an obligation, professional ethics obligation to establish discursive procedures, dialogue procedures with not only other business people, but with politicians and society to make the systems comprehensible, not just to the programmers, but to the people who use them. This is my last slide for now. You missed your homework. It's recent legislation passed by the European Parliament, and it says that the dangers of AI are potential harm to fundamental rights, democracy, the rule of law. So there's an obligation on the part of corporations to assess risks, to make use laws, to be accurate and transparent about those logs, and to ensure human oversight. Thank you for your attention.